Hey everybody, Jessica Burrell here. Welcome to episode 16 of Everyday Inspiring Women. I'm so excited to introduce my friend Heather Stetson, who's on the episode for today. I met Heather, we were just talking about that, trying to nail down exactly when it was, but about 3 years ago we met, and we were both coaches for a really popular MLM company, and that brought us together. We're in the same kind of coaching program, and that's how we met. And we've stayed in touch ever since. I am really honored that she agreed to do this with me tonight. She was sharing earlier that she was having a little bit of concern because she's more introverted, but I am so thankful that she decided to do it anyway, because she has an incredible very powerful story to share, and I think it's really pertinent, and I really want to have her. She'll share it because she'll do a much better job than I'm going to do, but just to share her story, and we're going to talk about her and her journey and everything else. So yeah, welcome, Heather. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. I think I felt like it was more of my honor that you asked me. I was really thankful. You asked me.
It's so awesome. And I think that's why I do this. I think I know, like, someone actually had said to me, you have the people are really pretty awesome. And I am a believer, like, I think everyone has a story. And I especially think my friends' stories are really fascinating and interesting because they are everybody's story in one way or another. And the more that we share our story, it helps us stand better in our own power, knowing who we are.
Exactly. Yes.
So with that in mind, like, let's kind of start where you want, but share some of your story with us, and kind of how did you get to where you are now?
Well, it's a long story, because this has been stemming from, probably since my earliest childhood memories that I can remember. But I think what's brought me to where I am today is about 4 years ago, I found myself in a place where I was struggling with a drinking habit that I had developed. And it's funny because coming from sharing part of my childhood, I came from a family of alcoholism. Both of my grandfathers were alcoholics. They both died when I was very, very young from unhealthy behaviors. And then my father is still an alcoholic, abusive to my mom. They divorced when I was very young for a lot of reasons, including abuse. And growing up, it's funny because I always said I would never, you get to that point in your life where you can either be a product of your environment or you can grow from your environment. And I fought hard to grow from my environment. There were a couple times, I think, throughout my teen years where I kind of fell into the wrong crowd, but I was able to pull myself out. And I always said, I will never be like my dad. I will never be like that. And I will never have those traits. I will never have a drinking problem. I will never, whatever, XYZ type of thing. So I made sure that I stayed in school. I went to college. I did everything right. Luckily, I found a wonderful husband. I didn't settle for anybody because I would always kind of mark it. And don't get me wrong, I had a relationship with my father. We had actually a great relationship because I loved him for who he was.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have a relationship with him now,
Mm-hmm.
which I think kind of what culminated to my drinking problem.
Yeah.
Because I found out some things about him that basically he was my hero growing up, despite his problems and his flaws and everything. He was truly my hero. And then I found out that my hero was actually somewhat of a villain. He found out a lot of things about him that were told to me when I was very young, and come to find out that they were all, as much as I vehemently wanted to ignore them and not believe them, found out they were true. So I'm kind of getting off track here, but
No, you're right on track. Please keep going.
He basically, so I ended up, I did all, like I said, I went back, I went to college, I found a good husband. I had, we had our first child, and then we had our second child. And I knew drinking was something I probably should not really be involved in, because when I was very young, because having a parent who is an alcoholic, drinking is very common. It's very, I remember going to a bar when I was 16 years old with my dad. That was normal. It was normal behavior. I'm not saying it's normal or it's right by any means, but when you grow up in that environment, it's normalized.
It's normal for that. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Right. So, I started drinking very young, and then I got to a point where probably about 19, 20, my drinking was very unhealthy. Yeah. I was, going down a very bad path. Luckily, with the help of my now husband at the time, who was my boyfriend, it shook me out of it. I didn't realize at the time that I was really trying to emotionally kind of cover up some things, and that's what it was. So we had stopped for many, 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 many years, and I thought, I was safe. I'm like, I'm safe. I'm older. I'm okay. So actually, before I got pregnant with our second daughter, we had kind of socially started drinking again, and everything was fine. And then I had my second daughter, and then probably I nursed her. So when I stopped nursing her at 10 months old, was when actually, I was like, we'll have a drink here and there, all this stuff. And then that's kind of thing when everything culminated with my father, and I had to actually completely disconnect him from my life for the safety of my children. And everything. So he, I think that just brought up a lot of pain for me and emotional anguish. And I didn't realize at the time, because you don't, because I think whenever you start a habit, it starts out pretty innocent, and then it just kind of spirals and gets out of control. So every once in a while drinking turned into an everyday drinking, and it turned into, I won't do it before 5. And then shortly it was before 5. And then, I started setting all these limits and parameters, and I wasn't meeting any of these limits or parameters after an extended period of time. Well, about 18 months into it, I was like, you know what? I've turned into exactly the person that I said I would never be. And I have 2 little girls who are my responsibility. And the youngest was she was almost 2, I guess, at the time. And then my oldest was about 6. So, and I looked at them and I'm like, what the heck am I doing? I'm like, I cannot repeat this cycle. I cannot let them be exposed to what I was exposed to, and then have them, when their children, are older, them going through the same cycle. Because it really is a cycle. You learn behaviors from what you're around, growing up, and then those behaviors become ingrained in you, whether it's subconsciously or unconsciously. And I think the breaking point for me was, because my drink of choice was rum and Coke. So I would have a drink, and then, it was to them, it was just a soda. But, but I would have to be like, you can't drink mommy's drink. This is mommy's drink. You can't drink my drink. And then they started asking me, Mommy, can I have some of your drink? And then when I would say no, it was just like this feeling inside. I'm like, what? It was like I was keeping the secret. And it was just like, and I was never like drinking to the point of how I was when I was younger, where it was dangerous. And I never drove when I was drinking or put them in any harm's way. I never, I was completely functioning. And, but I got to a point where I'm like, this is a problem. So I made the decision to quit. But then I shortly realized it's not that easy to quit. Just when you develop these habits that are so ingrained in your everyday thought and being. I remember feeling like leaving my job and being like, okay, well, because I would go to the liquor store by our house to pick up a bottle of alcohol. Like, I'm not going to do that today. Or I'd wake up that morning and be like, I'm not going to drink today. I'm not going to drink today. I'm not going to drink today. And then I would find myself parked in front of the liquor store. And then I'd sit there and be like, okay, I'm not going to go in. I'm not going to go in. I'm not going to go in. And then I would go in. Okay, well, I'm going to go home. I'm going to wait till, whatever time.
Yeah.
And then that time as soon as I get home, I'm like, oh, forget it, so I would drink. So, and I was like, it took me a good 4 months to finally actually make the decision where I was like, enough was enough. And that was 4 months of reading books, of listening to podcasts, of reading web, blogs of, women in recovery, and how they did it and tips and tricks. Because to me, AA was not the route for me. Like I just, that didn't resonate with me because I am very introverted. I am a very quiet. I'm more of a one-on-one. I don't do well in groups. I mean, I know my limitations, and I think if anything, that would not have worked for me. And I'm kind of more of a private, recovery type person. So, so finally, it's like funny enough, I finally was like, I have to do this, and I have to have somebody who I'm accountable to. And honestly, I think my drinking was so innocent. My husband didn't even realize it. Like that it had become such a problem for me in here in my brain that I was just like, because it was never really any kind of, there were fights between us. Like I said, everything was status quo, but it was just because it was a daily problem for me. And whenever drinking becomes a problem for you, then it's a problem. And, it doesn't matter how many drinks a day you're having, whether you're binge drinking, whether you're having blackouts, if you feel like you have an unhealthy relationship, then chances are that relationship is unhealthy. So I sat my husband down and told him, what was going on and how I felt and what I was going through. And at first, I think he was in denial, but I was like, no, this is, what I've been struggling with, what I've been feeling and everything. And he fully supported me. He's like, you know what? He's like, and we did it before.
Yeah.
So he said, we're going to quit. And he quit. He said, I'm not going to drink either. And he never had a problem. He was very much he was like the person like the alcoholics kind of admirer, so to speak, because he's like, he could have a couple of drinks and be done with it and not even think twice about it. But he, because he's a very supportive husband, he quit with me. And so when I finally quit, it was hard the first couple of weeks. I didn't really know what to do. So I did what I thought I should do. And I just kind of changed my physicality more than anything. Like when I would come home, like it was like the switching hour for me. So physically, I would not go into that kitchen. I would go outside. And I just remember raking leaves for hours. Like I was exchanging my drinking time with something else, like a different habit, so to speak. So I was like, well, and then I got to the point where, okay, I'm okay, but I'm just mentally, I just feel like this, going out and raking pine needles every day is just probably not something that I can keep up for the long term, because eventually I'm going to run out of pine needles. So I was like, you know what, I think I just need to speak to a therapist. So I went, and I had already had a therapist who I had worked with my childhood issues. And so, but I hadn't seen her in quite some time. So I went back to her and reconnected with her and told her, everything I was going through. So she helped me work through a lot. And it was, what got me to where I am today is she said, Heather, you really have to, whenever you have a habit, you really have to kind of find a healthier habit to replace that with. And so she kind of brainstormed with me and said, well, what do you like to do? And I was one of those people where I was always giving to everybody else. I was always taking care of everybody else. I was never taking the time for myself. I never went and had pedicures or manicures or spa or massages or worked out. Like I always admired the women who took the time to work out. And I was like, how can you, I could not, I was like, I don't have time for any of that. I didn't do anything for myself. Everything revolved around, being a wife and a mom. And before that was being a student, so I said, well, I always wanted to work out. I always wanted to be healthy and I want to take care of my body, but, I just never allowed that time for myself. And she's like, you really have to find something, whatever it is, whether it's knitting or reading or whatever. So I was like, what, I need to take care of myself. And I, felt like I needed to lose, some weight as well. So that's how I got into fitness, is that I started eating better, working out. But I had to make the time for that, which was really hard for me. And it became like, almost like my therapy time. And it still truly is. Like, that's what I do for myself, is how I take care of myself mentally, is I go and I work out. but I work out at home. I've never gone to a gym because where I live in South Florida, and I live in kind of more of a Western area. So I'm pretty kind of remotely away from, I'm at least 30 minutes from the closest gym. So for me, because I'm like, okay, well, it's 30 minutes there, 30 minutes back. That's an hour in driving time. Plus, if I'm there for an hour, I'm like, I cannot sacrifice 2 hours. And I work full time. I'm a full-time mom, or, I work. So I'm like, that's just not realistic. I know if it's not manageable for me, I know me, I won't do it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I made a commitment. I started working out at home. And 4 years later, that's still what I do. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. I think my drinking stemmed from a lot of things that I kind of kept bearing from my childhood and the hurts and everything. And because I like to cover things up, and I was very much a perfectionist. Like everything had to be perfect.
Mm-hmm.
And if I didn't look it in the eye, then it wasn't really there, type of thing.
Yeah.
So it was easy for me to cover, use the drinking as like a sedative in a sense, like just a drug to kind of numb myself out, numb my feelings out, to not have to face reality. And, it worked really well initially, but then it just became, like I said, a habit. And then it just became something that and as I've been studying, because that's what I've been kind of doing the last 4 years, is studying on nutrition and fitness and habits in general. And it's how that you just can subconsciously kind of create this momentum in your brain, and it just becomes, second nature to you. And it's with anything in life, whether it's drugs or alcohol or smoking or eating or, anything. So it's just kind of, everything just culminates from there. But, I think it was just me not facing me not taking care of me. And now it's just, who I am today is completely different than who I was then. And I've done a lot of self-care, and I've had to do a lot of work, and I've had to do a lot of looking at myself, because I'm not perfect either. I've made a lot of mistakes along the way, and I know that, I still have to work on myself. So it's just, it's kind of in a nutshell, I guess.
Oh, there's so much there. And I think it was near the end that this conversation's been on my mind today, because I knew we were talking, and I know your story. And, I happened to do a Facebook Live today, which was interesting, because about the quiet, because it was quiet in my house. And I'm like, it's interesting, like I'm in the quiet and immediately I don't want it to be, I'm good with it now. But I remember a time where immediately I'm like, okay, I don't want quiet. Like I can't be in this quiet. I don't want to know what's in my mind. I don't want to think. I don't want to know what my thoughts are. I don't actually want to dig in and figure it out. And there's so many ways to numb that. So it can be like, there's more socially acceptable ways to do it, like jumping on Facebook or, eating potentially. But then drinking is another one. And I would argue, and I actually was thinking about, I'm kind of springing this question on you a little bit, so I'm sorry, but I was thinking, I hear a lot of controversy, there's articles that will pop up about, a wine mom, right? Like, oh my God, I need a glass of wine. And I was actually going to ask you what your opinion is on it, because I can see it both ways. I can see it as, I come home from work and I'm like, you know what, I want a glass of wine, because I do enjoy drinking wine, as an example.
Mm.
But there's a difference between like having a glass of wine, maybe with my dinner, or like a bottle of wine, and I'm saying it a little tongue in cheek, but at the same time, I think, is wine mom a culture? And again, I'll stop talking. What do you think about that? You understand what I'm saying, right?
I think because of what I've gone through before, it was like, I remember I had this glass. Somebody had gotten me when I was drinking this wine glass that said "Mommy Sippy Cup."
Yeah.
Like it was a wine glass, and it actually had written on it "Mommy Sippy Cup," which at the time I thought that was really cute. I was like, oh, this is such a cute gift. I loved it. I would drink wine every once in a while, because I also went back and forth between my alcohols. I was like, okay, well, wine is, a little more fancy, so it's not really that bad. Like I think you get to where you label your alcohol, where you're like, you just to make it kind of okay in your mind. And, or like I was drinking, like I said, I would drink rum and Coke Zero because the Coke didn't have any sugar, and the rum had less calories and it wasn't as calorie filled as alcohol, so you rationalize it. And so I think now when I see memes like that, like on Facebook, like, oh, it's mommy wine, or I think there was a commercial. Somebody I forget, it was a big name brand that did a commercial about a mom needing to take a drink from her day, from her kids and all that stuff. Now that actually bothers me because I feel like they're marketing to women and making it seem okay to numb your mind and to numb your life, because that's what you're doing, is you're numbing yourself from your life. And if you're numbing yourself from your life, wine is not going to fix your life. You need to really work on it. You really need to talk to somebody or read a book or look at yourself or whatever. And I think that's what a lot of what women just don't do, is they don't take the time to look at themselves and to work on themselves and to realize, sometimes when you think you're okay, you're not okay. And it is okay to not be okay. Yeah. Because that's the other big thing. So as far as the whole wine culture, like you said, I do see both sides of it. Like I'm not this judgmental, teetotaler woman or anything like that. I mean, I have friends who drink. My husband, we're very into the hunting and the camping. We have a population of our friends who are pretty big drinkers, but that doesn't bother me anymore. It doesn't make me want to drink anymore. It's like, that's them. That's their stuff. Because I've got a hard enough time dealing with my stuff. I don't judge them. This is what they choose to do with their life, and that's it. But when I see that it's being sensationalized, or, even for like the kids, the upcoming, like the adolescents coming up, where they're like, oh, it all just leads back to marketing. Like, back when it was smoking, you had the Marlboro Man who was smoking a cigarette, making, like, this is back, I'm dating myself, but where it was cool. It was like, you smoke because you want to be cool, you want to fit in. And now it's like smoking is so taboo. It's, whereas, alcohol is socially acceptable, and you need to drink to get away. You need to drink to feel. I think that was a big thing for me too with my drinking, was I am so shy. Like, I'm so reserved and introverted. Like, drinking, like I had to pre-drink to go out with my friends. Right. This is my before drinking, not really, like, I didn't really go out much after I had the kids, but like I had to really to let loose and be free. Like I had to drink, or it was like, I would look forward to occasions to go drink. Yeah. I'd be like, okay, not that I didn't want to go have fun at this occasion. I knew there was going to be alcohol there. So that's why I was looking forward to vacation. And it's like, so when you're looking forward to something, not for the memories or the connections or just the plain old good time, and because you want to actually drink, I mean, I don't necessarily agree with that mentality, but I know I was there, so I can relate to it. Mm-hmm. Like, I don't think, it's just, especially this where women can feel so socially isolated sometimes, especially like with Facebook. It's like you see so much, and you see people make their lives sometimes not look like they really actually in reality are. And and a lot of women just don't realize that. And they just, okay, well, I'll drink, or I'll, try to keep up with whoever to, make up for it. And so, yeah.
Totally. Right. Like, and we put this pressure on ourselves to be perfect, but nobody is perfect. Even even your Instagram stories and your Facebook feeds it's not perfect at all. So I relate more to people who are real though. Like when I hear a story of someone and all I hear is all the successes, I'm like, I almost immediately distrustful and going, well, something went, you shit the bed somewhere. Like, let's be honest, like something went wrong somewhere. Like, give it to me straight. Cause it's like, I almost immediately distrust the story and I'm like, you know what, maybe that did happen, but you're leaving something out because it's never just a perfect rise to the top or, or whatever. Like everyone has struggles. So I'm way more interested in the struggle. I think it's fascinating because it's for me, it's like, how do you overcome it? Sorry.
No,
go ahead.
One of my favorite quotes is, well, the quote kind of goes like, I found my strength through my struggles. it's just like, that's how I found who I am, is through my struggles. Like everything I've gone through, even in my childhood, although like, the experiences shaped me into who I am now, in meeting the man that I have and not settling for my dad, somebody like my dad, or, you know what I mean? It's like everything shaped you. Like, I just believe everything happens for a reason. And not to say I've always felt this way and I still work on this, but I just feel like, when you have regrets or guilt, like you're living in the past, if we have too much worry or living too much in the future. And I'm really trying to I really kind of worked hard the last 4 years to live in the present and to be in the moment. That's so hard for me, is being in the moment. Because I was such a high achiever and such a perfectionist, and I had all these expectations of how my life was going to be spelled out and where I would be, and I would have X, Y, and Z. And then when certain parameters weren't met, sometimes you can't handle that, and you just look to other alternatives to kind of help you get through that. And that's just not how life is, and I just think that's kind of hard to swallow sometimes. Everything, you have all these and that's the way I think I did a post recently about the expectation. It's just that, you can't. I read an article that, like, as far as marriages are concerned, one of they say that the number one thing that causes divorce is not necessarily like infidelity or cheating or anything like that. It's actually lack of unmet expectations of your partner. And that can go with anybody, any person in your life that you love or you relate to or whatever. Like, you have build up all these expectations, and that might not be their expectations or their reality, but you have this like movie going on in your head of how things should be. And when it doesn't play out, when the ending doesn't match it, it causes total chaos in your life. And then that gets filled into everything. So.
Oh, so true. I think we could talk for like hours about expectations, because I feel you there. Like it's these, I call them stealth expectations sometimes, because sometimes I don't even, I try not to have expectations, and I'm very self-aware about all these expectations. And then all of a sudden I'm like doing something and I'm feeling as soon as I feel disappointed, right? Like, that's your key emotion. And I'm like, wait, disappointment? Okay, what happened? I had a stealth expectation somewhere and I didn't even realize it. So like unpacking it, but yeah, expectations, it's terrible. Yeah, they're tough. It's hard not having expectations sometimes too.
I think you can have expectations. I just think you have to keep in the back of your mind that it may not play out how you expect it. You still have to have that reality component. I think that's what it was. It's like, you just have to have, it's not all black and white. There's like a lot of gray. And when you have that A-type perfectionist personality, it's really hard to see the gray, because usually it's either black or white.
Yeah, so it's really good to start to practice looking for it too, right? When you're not used to it.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yep.
Awesome. Oh my God. So you talked it was awesome. So you talked a lot about your self-care, so that your primary source of self-care then is really taking that time to work out. And did you I forget now, you were getting certified to be a personal trainer? Like, did you end up completing that course?
I did. I got certified to be a personal trainer. Because eventually I do want to start my own online coaching business. But I'm still working on me a lot more. Like, I still help women, not for a fee, but just because that makes me feel good. And I just want to give back, because I know where I was and I know how I felt. And whenever I see a woman who has a need or just doesn't know where to start, or is just, for lack of a better word, floundering, like, if I can offer her some insight, I just feel like, it's invaluable, because I know that's what I needed, and I know where I was, and then we all start somewhere, So, and it's really cool to see somebody who didn't think they could do something, and then you get messages that, like, I did this, or I worked out this week, or I, chose a salad over, a hamburger, and it's just small choices. It's just all the small choices that compound over time. But yeah, so going back to your original question, I did get my personal training certification. Originally, it was just because I wanted, for my own knowledge, to learn how to train myself, because I do train from home. I don't go to a gym. I've never had a personal trainer myself. And I really fell in love with weight training.
Yeah.
Originally, I was very cardio focused. And then about 2 years in, I switched gears and started playing with some weights, very low amount of weights, low volume, I should say. And then I fell in love with it. Like, it made me feel really strong and empowered. And then I started seeing results and getting muscles, and just there's just something about lifting weights that, like, when you see yourself progressing and you see you can up your weights and then lift more for longer or whatever it is, it's really empowering to me. So, I started doing my own programming and training myself instead of having to rely on different programs and things to do it. So, because your body really needs different things. And it's not like, there's training programs like DVDs and stuff you can get, but those are really kind of cookie cutter programs. And it might necessarily be like what you need for your body. Like, I know how my body responds now. There's certain exercises or routines that I do because that's what works for me and that fits into my lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
So it's, yeah.
Awesome. So good.
Yeah.
And so where are you at right now? What are you working on right now, or what I like to call them themes? So like, what things are popping up in your life that is kind of forcing you to look at anything differently right now?
So it's funny you asked that, because I'm actually looking at authenticity, trying to be genuine to me. Because I actually have this book. It's pretty good. I just got it from the library. It's Be Yourself, Everyone Else Is Already Taken, from Mike Robbins.
Awesome.
I don't know if you've read it, but I started reading it and I'm like, I can't stop reading it. It's so, like, I don't really like personal development books that are just like very dry and, okay, do this and do that. Like, I'm more of a memoir, like, okay, this is what I experienced, and I'll extract from that. Like, I relate more to people and their experiences than like, just okay, you have this problem, then do this, or you have that problem, then do this type of thing. So anyway, authenticity and being me and learning to be me. Because I think that's what, we live in this world where we don't know how to present ourselves, and we don't know, we always worry so much about what other people think, and okay, is it okay? And like, I'm really I want to attract my tribe, kind of like what you've been building and doing. Like, I want people who want to be around me and that I want to be around. And I need, as far as a network of women, because I really want to help women. I really want to help them realize their strength and their power. Like, I have this little, my little theme is Strong Woman You. That's kind of like my brainchild of what I'm trying to develop. Is I just want women to realize, I see the strength in you. I want you to see the strength in you. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of more of a university setting too, where it's like, you could become strong. And it's not just lifting weight strong. I mean, like, inside strong, strength inside and out, because it really starts from the inside. Because you can lift weights, you can exercise, but if you don't fix what's between your ears and work on that, then it's, it's kind of everything else kind of goes by the wayside, because that's where all your habits, kind of stem from.
Totally. And like, you had that insight, you knew as soon as you wanted to stop drinking, it was like, okay, I need help through books. And like you were saying, like, really working on your mindset. That's huge.
Mm-hmm.
That's, without that, like, exactly like you said. I'm just reiterating what you said. Without that, it's like, it's almost like you can't even do anything else.
And I still to this day, like, I'm always reading something personal. Like, I can't remember. I tried to read like just a book for fun. And I'm like, still like, I came across this other book. I'm like, no, I have to read this book. It's so hard for me just to not, because once you start, and then I have moments or periods in my life where I know that I need it. Like, I really need to like work on myself even more, and just, whether it's breathing or, I turned 40 in April. So I was thinking that I really needed to kind of get more in touch with my spiritual self. Mm-hmm. Like, I really need to work on my insides more. So I've been working with a woman who she does fitness training, but because, even coaches, need coaches. Like I felt like I needed somebody to help to lean on.
Yeah.
Because I was doing a lot on my own for so long, because again, I'm very stubborn and I'm just introverted and just feel like, I could take on the world myself. And then I got to a point where I'm like, I feel like I'm like, okay, I want somebody else to take the wheel for a little bit from me. So she's helping me with some things, but she does some spiritual training too. So I'm doing this spiritual class with her. It's like a 12-week telecourse about spirituality, which I don't really know much about it. This is all new for me. I do believe in it. I believe in a higher power and, everything around that. And everything kind of is culminated from a center.
Yeah.
But I never really studied it. So that's kind of where I'm at now, is I'm learning about, your archetypes and chakras and everything, So, and it's interesting. It's cool.
Yeah.
It's like, and it's very new age, and I'm, and I'm a nurse. That's my profession.
Yeah.
So my mind is kind of a little different than that.
Mm-hmm.
I think because, I'm science, more, facts, evidence-based and, everything like that. So this is kind of a new way of thinking for me, but something I've been wanting to do for a while. I just have never really taken the time. So I said, you know what? I'm going to take the time. Now's the time.
Awesome. So good.
Really cool.
Well, I'll have to send you, I'm thinking of 2 books for you. One for your authenticity theme. So I'm just going to tell you, because it's my favorite, is my all-time favorite book. Like when I was like, what's your favorite book? It's this one. It's The Gifts of Imperfection by Brene Brown. And
I read that like a couple years ago.
So if authenticity is coming up for you, it's probably worth the reread then.
I'll reread it, because probably when I was reading it, I wasn't really ready for it. Like I remember reading it and I liked it, but it wasn't something that I was like mind blown from. So, but I think I'm ready for that now.
I feel like it would probably resonate with you that much more, because the title is, Gifts of Imperfection, but it's letting go of who you think you're supposed to be, and instead being you, right? So it's a similar vein to what you're reading now, but she's really good at saying like, here's some guideposts, and she mixes in a really great storytelling with it as well.
Yeah. I like to watch her YouTube videos.
She's so good. And the other one I listened to for like the spirituality one it's called Rise, Sister, Rise by Rebecca Campbell.
Okay. I haven't heard of that one.
I listened to her audiobook. I don't read. Disclaimer, Jessica does not read. She listens to audibles. She listens to audiobooks. But so I listened to Rise, Sister, Rise, and Rebecca Campbell is Australian. So she has this wonderful voice and this beautiful Australian accent. But it's actually, and there's a ton of good content, of course, but it's really good. I would call it almost like an intro spiritual book for me, because she talks about her story too. But I'm just dipping my toe in that water as well. So it was actually a good timing.
That's interesting. And it's funny you can't read, or you can't read, because I'm the opposite. I can't listen. My mind is so squirrely. I have meditation is something I'm really, really trying to do. I'm supposed to be meditating for 10 minutes a day because of this course. And I have to be honest and say that I have really, really, really struggle with sitting down and making myself do it, and quieting my mind, because it's so hard when you're I've got so much going on in there, and I can't it's hard to do it, and I want to do it, because when I do it I feel good, but it's like the exercise thing. You have to really train yourself to commit to doing it, and
it's like a muscle, right? It's the same as training a muscle. You're not going to get sexy arms like yours just by not lifting weights when practicing, right? So meditation is totally the same. It's like, I don't think there's a right or a wrong way to do it, as long as you are doing it and you're just practicing, focusing on a breath and not letting your thoughts totally run away on you, and just keep practicing, and you just get better at it.
Yeah. I think
Keep
that's
it
what was
simple.
my problem initially was, it's again, the whole perfectionism theme coming up as far as like, I'm like, you have these thoughts of how it should go. And you have to, you see, this picture of this woman just sitting there meditating and in this total zen. And, you're comparing yourself to others.
Yeah.
And but it's not reality. So so that's why I'm trying to like tone it down. Like, no, like you said, if I can just manage, a minute of just focused breathing, then it's all
Yes.
good.
Yes.
That's it.
Exactly.
And then
Yeah.
build it from there.
Let's cut ourselves some slack
Yeah.
here, right? Yeah.
Right.
So like you showed us the one book, but I was curious, like, do you have like one favorite book? So like all of the podcasts and all the books you've read, like if you had to say like this one book is my hands down my favorite book, this is it.
I don't know. Because you sent me that, and I've been thinking about that. I can't say that I have one ones, and it's really hard for me to like finish like one book. But it's really, I think the biggest ones that had impacted me was when I was started, my recovery, and it was all the memoirs that I was reading on addiction and women in recovery. And I forget her name, but the book was called on drinking. But it's a recovery memoir, and I can't remember that name. I'm horrible with names, but I can't remember what her name was. And that book really resonated with me because it's just reading from the perspective of a woman who, and she was pretty had a high social status, and she was had a problem with drinking and how she struggled and what she went through, and it was like I felt like I was reading my story because it was like all the feelings she was feeling was the same exact feelings that I was feeling, and it's helped normalize. And I still to this day, like, I read a lot of memoirs. Like I have a hard time reading the books, like just the straightforward self-help books. Like I read memoirs, and it's funny. The one book that I've read, and I have to be honest, I have a hard time even sitting down and finishing a book. Like I will have like literally probably 4 books or 5 books and I'm reading at the same time. And then I move on. Like I take a little bit, like I start reading them and I take a little bit and then I kind of move on. But I actually read this book. Don't laugh, but it's I'm a big Prince fan, and I came across this book that I don't know how I did, but it was written by the woman he was married to, Maite Garcia, and it's called The Most Beautiful. And she wrote it after he passed, and it was about her life with him because she was only like 16 when they met.
Wow.
She was 15. And it was almost like an Elvis and Priscilla. And I love Elvis and Priscilla. Like, that Elvis to me was like, I read that when I was a young teen, and like I just loved that book. So this kind of, but in reading it, like you think, oh, it's this big, he's this big superstar, and he had all this going for him, and it talks about how I don't want to say he groomed her, because I think he really truly did love it, and the way she wrote it was from a very loving place, but just talking about her life with him and all their struggles, and they had lost their child, and the whole fame part of it, and just like reading their story, and it's like you can see like resonating in certain parts of your life and how you had certain pains and how you worked with it, and these people are no different, what they went through. But that book, I literally read it a day. I could not put it down. Less than a day. My family was so annoyed because they wanted to stop. I'm like, no, I can't. I have to finish this book, because the way she wrote and the way she expressed her feelings and what she was going through, and everything, and being that woman who was kind of lost in a way in this huge world and didn't know where to turn, and and being in the spotlight and everything like that. It's kind of like how I felt for a while. I mean, I wasn't a superstar, obviously, but it was more just being lost and just not knowing where to turn, and anyway, so it's a good book. I highly recommend it, especially if you're a Prince fan.
Yeah, totally. Sounds really good.
It was so good. Yes.
Oh, so good. Awesome. So yeah, well, send me, if you think of that one book that you read, the autobiography, then send that to me and I'll put it in the show notes. And,
Yes.
And I'll put your contact info in the show notes, but how can people get in touch with you?
You can find me on Facebook. I'm under Heather Stetson, or I have a community page. It's called Strong Woman You. So I just post a lot of inspirational posts. I share a lot of myself on that, just to help other people, because I know that, it's therapy for me in a way. Like every morning I post something, because that's something maybe I'm thinking about, or what I'm going through, or something. I have a friend who's going through something, and I post it, just as a kind of nonchalant way of speaking to them, or whatever it is, because it's almost my journaling in a way. But it's a lot of just strong women, like trying to develop your strength as a woman in a world trying to juggle everything and 10 bazillion things. And there's fitness stuff. I mean, I do talk about like nutrition and exercise and everything, but a lot of what resonates with me is the emotional and the mental aspect of it. Because it all starts there.
Totally. That's why we connected so quickly, because we are totally both on the same page with that. Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it was funny how we met, because I just remember like we just kind of chit-chatted, and it was like one of those things where it's like, hey, I want to be friends with you. You come here, know. That's just how it's been then since.
I totally agree.
Yeah.
You know what, Heather? Thank you so much for sharing your story, like being vulnerable and telling us, because I think much like the books that you read that inspired you, I think your story is inspiring for so many people, and I really hope that you keep sharing it and be brave just like this, and jump on Facebook and do some lives and tell your story, because it's got so much power. And yeah, it's scary, but you can totally do it.
I do. And over time I'll get a little more eloquent with sharing my story, but it's, it's a lot of fragmentation and things that I'm still trying to put together, I guess, because you don't realize how many pieces there are, and like, how things have affected you and shaped you. So it's all a work in progress. That's all it is.
Aren't we all? So thank you so much. It was awesome connecting with you.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah,
yes,
of course.
I'm really excited to do this, that we did it.
Yeah. We'll talk soon, girl.
Okay.
Bye.
Thanks.
Talk
to you later.
Okay, bye.